Welcome to History Date Night, a World War II podcast covering the Second World War in chronological order, from the opening shots to final victory. I'm Justin, and joining me is my wife and co-host, Jenny. Together we explore the people, battles, and turning points that shape the deadliest conflict in human history, one date at a time. On this episode, Scottish soldiers will be fighting in trousers.
The Japanese reaction is immediate and furious.
The world's first multinational intelligence operations. Welcome back to History Day Night. I'm Justin. Last episode we followed Finland through the Soviet reorganization under Timoshenko, watched Churchill give his House of Many Mansions broadcast, saw the Enigma code take its first meaningful steps toward being broken, and heard the Three Stooges go after Hitler. This episode, January 21st through the 27th, brings us a Royal Navy destroyer lost with all hands, a British warship boarding a Japanese passenger liner within sight of Mount Fuji, a defector who almost unmasked one of the greatest traitors in British intelligence history, and did not.
I'm Jenny. This week also has Charles de Gaulle submitting an urgent memo that gets ignored, French soldiers getting so bored that they've stopped shaving, South Africa's parliament rejecting a separate peace with Germany by a surprisingly close vote, and Churchill closing the week with a speech that we think is worth ending on. Let's get into it.
January 21st, in the Moray Firth, a large bay on the northeastern coast of Scotland, roughly 150 miles north of Edinburgh. HMS Exmouth is sent out in the early morning to search for a German submarine that has just torpedoed a Danish merchant ship nearby. The Exmouth is an E-class destroyer, a fast, capable warship, exactly the right kind of tool for hunting submarines. She finds the submarine, but U-22 finds her first.
At 6 a.m., U-22 fires a torpedo. The Exmouth is hit. A nearby vessel, the MV Cyprian Prince, reports hearing 2 explosions and sees nothing more. No distress signal is received. No survivors are found. All 189 men aboard HMS Exmouth are lost. The full story of what happened is not confirmed until after the war, when German naval records are examined and show that U-22 made the kill. The Royal Navy dispatched a ship to hunt a submarine, and the submarine sank the hunter without anyone surviving to describe it. 189 men gone in a morning, in waters 20 miles from the Scottish coast.
The same day, something happens on the other side of the world that reveals British naval reach and the growing friction with Japan. The British light cruiser HMS Liverpool intercepts the Japanese passenger liner Asama Maru, approximately 35 miles off the Japanese coast, within sight of the distant Mount Fuji. British sailors board the ship, search the manifest, and remove 21 passengers identified as German sailors. These men are survivors of the German liner Columbus, which was scuttled in the Atlantic in December to avoid British capture. They had been making their way home to Germany via Japan, and they had planned to take the Trans-Siberian Railway.
The Japanese reaction is immediate and furious. Demonstrations break out outside the British embassy in Tokyo. The Japanese Foreign Ministry protests vigorously. Japan is not at war with Britain. The boarding has taken place in what Japan considers its coastal waters, within sight of a mountain considered sacred. One diplomatic note describes the omission to sign the ship's log as a further infringement. The incident is eventually resolved. 9 of the 21 Germans, described by Britain as unsuitable for military service, are returned to Japan. The other 12 are taken to Britain as prisoners.
But the British objective in boarding the Asama Maru was never really about those 21 men specifically. It was about the approximately 1,000 German merchant sailors currently stranded in American ports, unable to go home via the Atlantic because Britain controlled those waters. The quickest alternative route home is across the Pacific and through the Soviet Union. Britain is trying to block that route. Japan's protests amount to a statement that Britain is not entitled to enforce its war in Japanese waters. Both positions are legally defensible, and the underlying tension between a Britain fighting Germany and a Japan watching carefully is what makes the incident matter.
This week gives us enough to tell the full Enigma story properly. Where it started, what the Poles did, what is happening now at Bletchley Park. We've mentioned the Enigma machines in passing several times, but it's time to explain what they actually are and why they matter so much.
Enigma is an electromechanical cipher machine, a device that scrambles messages so thoroughly that the resulting text looks like random letters to anyone who doesn't have an identical machine set to the same identical configuration. A German signals officer types the plain text message into the keyboard. The machine scrambles it through a series of rotating wheels, or rotors, each wired to substitute letters. The output is broadcast in Morse code. The receiver, with an identically configured machine, types in the scrambled text and reads the original message. Change the rotor settings and the entire encryption changes it completely. Germany changes its rotor settings every single day.
Germany uses Enigma for virtually all of its military communications. The Luftwaffe, the Kriegsmarine, the Army, the SS. If the Allies could read Enigma traffic, they would know German intentions almost in real time. Every convoy that the U-boats are hunting, every airfield the Luftwaffe is targeting, every order sent from Berlin to the front, all of it encoded by Enigma. Breaking it is not just an intelligence advantage, it is potentially a war-winning one.
The story begins with a Polish mathematician named Marian Rujewski, who, in 1932, working in a basement in Warsaw, cracked the basic Enigma cipher using information obtained from a French spy inside German intelligence. Within months, Polish cryptanalysts could read large portions of German Army Enigma traffic. For 6 years, Poland maintained this secret capability. When the Germans added additional rotors to the machine in 1938, making it vastly more complex, Poland no longer had the resources to keep up. As war became inevitable, the Poles did something unprecedented. In July 1939, they invited British and French intelligence to a meeting in Warsaw and gave them everything. The machines, the mathematical methods, and they reconstructed Enigma doubles they had built. Years of work handed freely to their allies in one of the world's first multinational intelligence operations.
Since October, Polish cryptologists have been working in France with British colleagues. The machines arrived in Paris in October. We mentioned them when they first landed. And on January 20th, a team at Bletchley Park in England, a Victorian country house about 50 miles northwest of London that has been converted into a code-breaking facility, achieves a major breakthrough. Dilly Knox's team, working alongside mathematicians including Alan Turing, cracks a German administrative Enigma key from October 28th. The key is months old and therefore useless for intelligence purposes, but what it proves is that their new method worked.
Turing is designing an electromechanical device called the bomb, based on Polish machines called bomba, that will automate the process of finding rotor settings. The bomb will arrive in March. When it does, the gap between Germans sending a message and the Allies reading it will begin to collapse from days to hours to hopefully minutes. The intelligence that flows from this, known as ultra, will arguably shorten the war by 2 years according to many historians. It begins in a country house in January 1940, with mathematicians cracking a code from 3 months ago. Portions of the story are told in the 2014 film Imitation Game, which follows a dramatized version of the story.
Let's talk about what the phony war actually feels like from the inside, specifically from the French side, because the journal entries this week give us a vivid picture. The French army has been sitting behind the Belgian border since September. The Germans have not attacked. The soldiers have nothing to do. A French soldier's diary, quoted this week, captures the mood. He wrote, "We lie stretched out on the straw, yawning, and even get a taste for doing nothing. We wash less and less. We don't bother to shave anymore. We can't raise the effort to sweep the place or clear the table after eating. Along with boredom, filth dominates the base."
German propaganda is working on this. Lord Haha broadcasts to French troops that Britain will make France bear the burden of the war while British soldiers stay safely at home. French soldiers and German soldiers opposite each other don't shoot. German soldiers wander around in view of French positions, and the French don't fire. There are, by this week, essentially no training exercises. Officers are getting drunk, men are going absent without leave. The French High Command has sent Josephine Baker and Maurice Chevalier to entertain the troops, and that is described as essentially the full extent of the morale program.
On January 26th, a relatively unknown French colonel, Charles de Gaulle, submits a memo to French High Command. He has been submitting these since before the war even started. He writes, "We began the war with 5 million soldiers, yet our aerial forces are only now being equipped, and our armored vehicles are too weak and too few in number." He believes that the war is going to expand seriously. He thinks France is behind the curve on mobile warfare, on armored doctrine, on the use of aircraft and coordination with ground forces. He is correct on every single point. His memo is received, filed, and not acted upon.
Now for the reality of the preparation for modern warfare. Tradition begins going out the window. On January 23rd, the British Secretary of State for War announces in the House of Commons that kilts will not be issued to members of Scottish regiments, except to pipers and drummers, for reasons connected to the possible use of poison gas by the enemy. Scottish soldiers will be fighting in trousers. The pipers, though, will maintain tradition. Gas protection trumps heritage, though apparently not where bagpipes are concerned.
On January 26th, Germany reinforces its radio ban. Listening to foreign broadcasts has been illegal since the start of the war. This week, the penalty is clarified: death. The specific concern is Lord Haha and BBC German language programming, both of which are clearly reaching Germans' ears in significant numbers. The death penalty notice is posted publicly. Whether it deters people from listening is another question. The fact that Germany has to threaten execution tells you something about how many Germans have really been tuning in.
Also this week, half of London's evacuated children have come home. In September, about 735,000 children were evacuated from London to the countryside, ahead of the expected German bombing campaign. By January 26th, 316,000 have returned. Parents decided Germany wouldn't bomb after all. Children were unhappy in unfamiliar homes in the countryside. When the bombing does come, and it does, in September 1940, the children will have to be evacuated again. But for now, families are back together.
On January 24th, Hermann Goering formally appoints Reinhard Heydrich to coordinate planning for what is called the solution to the Jewish question. He already runs the RSHA, the Reich Security Main Office that controls the Gestapo, the SD, and the criminal police. He had been the architect of Jewish persecution since Kristallnacht in 1938. This appointment on January 24, 1940, gives him the formal authority to plan the systematic murder of European Jewry. The document that results from this appointment, the Wannsee Conference Protocol of January 1942, will outline the administrative machinery for killing 11 million people, and the basis for that plan begins right here.
On January 25, 1940, a site is selected for the construction of a new concentration camp. The site is near a small town in occupied Poland named Auschwitz. The German name for the town is Auschwitz. It is in the general government territory of occupied Poland, Hans Frank's domain, about 40 miles west of Krakow. The site is chosen for practical reasons. It has rail connections in multiple directions. It is in a depopulated area. It has existing buildings that can be repurposed. This is a logistical decision. By the war's end, between 1.1 and 1.5 million people will be killed there.
On the same day, January 25th, Hans Frank issues the Göring-Frank Circular, ordering the Polish economy redesigned to serve German military production. His specific order was: prepare for the transportation to the Reich of not fewer than 1 million male and female agricultural and industrial workers. The slave labor system that has already been applied to Czechs and Jews is now extended formally to Poles. The circular is classified as top secret. Copies are obtained almost immediately by Polish intelligence agents and passed to the government in exile in Paris, where they are publicized. The world is being told what is happening, but whether it listens is a different question.
3 documents, 3 appointments, and 3 decisions, all in the same 48 hours in January 1940. Heydrich is charged with planning the final solution. A site is selected for what becomes Auschwitz, and 1 million Poles are ordered into forced labor. The machinery is being built. It is not yet running at full capacity, but it is preparing to.
January 23rd. The Longham Hotel in London, a Grand Victorian hotel in Portland Place, about half a mile north of Oxford Street, that has been requisitioned by the BBC for use as offices and accommodation. MI5 is conducting a debriefing here. The subject is Walter Krivitsky, the former head of Soviet military intelligence in Western Europe, who defected to the West in 1937, published a memoir, and has come to Britain at MI5's invitation to share what he knows.
Krivitsky names over 100 Soviet agents operating in Europe, including 16 who are British subjects. He describes various agents that he only knows from description. He describes an agent inside the Foreign Office who spent his holidays in Spain during the Civil War, is the son of a clergyman, and went to Eton and Oxford. He describes another agent who is a young journalist who traveled to Spain as a reporter for a conservative newspaper. The single MI5 officer assigned to investigate these leads goes through the list. He does not identify, among the names and descriptions Krivitsky provides, a man named Harold Adrian Russell Philby. known as Kim. Kim Philby will eventually be exposed as one of the most damaging Soviet agents in the history of Western intelligence, having reached the very top of MI6 and passed its secret to Moscow for decades. Krivitsky describes Kim in 1940 without knowing his name, but nobody makes the connection.
Krivitsky himself will be found dead in a Washington, D.C. hotel room in February 1941. The official verdict is suicide. Given what he knew and who was looking for him, most historians considered the official verdict optimistic. He tried to warn the West. The warning was partially heeded, mostly filed, and one of its most important signals was missed entirely.
January 23rd to 27th, in South Africa, former Prime Minister J.B.M. Hertzog, who was voted out of office in September 1939 after his parliament refused to back his plan to keep South Africa neutral, introduces a motion in the House of Assembly that the war with Germany should be ended and peace restored. Hertzog had become increasingly sympathetic to Germany's position and argued that South Africa had no quarrel with Germany.
Prime Minister Jan Smuts responds by comparing Herzog's speech to a chapter from Mein Kampf and saying that Goebbels could not have done it better. The vote on January 27th goes 81 to 59 against Herzog's motion. 81 to 59. South Africa stays in the war by 22 votes. Notes describe the parliamentary chamber. On one side, English speakers and liberal Afrikaners. On the other, what the source calls irreconcilable Boers with their own theories of racial supremacy. The country is divided, but the majority holds.
And on January 27th, in Manchester, Churchill speaks at the Free Trade Hall, a great Victorian concert hall in the city, one of Britain's most famous public venues. He is uneasy about war production. He is worried about pace. He delivers a speech broadcast to the Dominions and the United States. He is puzzled, he says, that Britain has not yet been bombed. He wonders what Germany is waiting for. He is concerned that the country is not moving fast enough, and he says this: "Each to our station, there is not a week, nor a day, nor an hour to be lost."
Not a week, nor a day, nor an hour to be lost. He is right. The Western offensive that Hitler has postponed is scheduled for spring. The Mannerheim Line is about to face Timoshimo's rebuilt Red Army. Norway is being eyed from both sides. The Enigma code-breaking machines at Bletchley Park are beginning to turn. The site outside Auschwitz has been chosen. And Churchill is standing in Manchester telling Britain that it is running out of time. Next episode, the Winter War enters another brutal phase. Thanks for joining us for episode 19 of History Date Night. We'll see you next time.
See you then.